So we run the phone number, we get an address. It's a farm in Salem, Wisconsin, and it just looks right. So we set up surveillance on it. There was a abandoned pickup truck parked just off the curtilage. And my partner and I...
Fair game.
Yeah, my partner and I crawl on our bellies. We get underneath the pickup truck, and we got a perfect eyeball on the front door. And all of a sudden, the doors open up, and the guys are walking out of the house with bales of pot. At the same time this is happening, I'm laying where I could get a good look, but I'm also laying in a position where I can't do a lot of moving. And one of the guys comes out to take a leak right on the tire that's hiding me. I look at Charlie, my partner, I said, Charlie, this is bad. I don't know if they pay us enough for this.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. What is wrong with you people that you keep coming back? But I love you because you do. I appreciate your support more than you ever know. Saying thank you just doesn't seem to be enough, but right now that seems like the best I could do. So thanks for coming back and joining us here. We're into 2025 now. We had the 2 episodes up already. This is our 3rd of the year, episode 180. And I got to tell you, we got a special guest on today. You know, I say that every week we have a special guest on, but it's true. I mean, I bring on the best studs and studettes that you can find anywhere in the world, especially in the law enforcement, first responder, and military community. They amaze me. Our guest today, Bill, I'd never met him before. Saw him on Facebook, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in here in just a few minutes. But he's got a book out. We're going to talk a lot about that book. But it just shows you he's one of the predecessors of the Drug Enforcement Administration. And for our regular listeners, you know, I did 26 years there, and I was a cop for 12 years before that, what I call a real cop, and then I became a Fed. But that's also a point of contention with a lot of people as well if you're in the law enforcement community. But it makes for a lot of fun. But I want to introduce our guest today. It's Bill Hehr. Bill, brother, thank you so much for coming on the show, and welcome to the Game of Crimes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Well, let's just hope you say that when we finish. You never know.
Well, we'll see what shakes out.
And I tell you what, we've been chatting a little bit before we got started here, and I think Bill can give back as good as he can take it. So this should be a lot of fun today. But you know what we do here on Game of Crimes? We always start with our small town police blotter, and I've got to read you the disclaimer. Why do I have to read you the disclaimer? I have no idea. This is something my co-host started back when, and he's smarter than me, so I figured, well, if he did it, I might as well do it too. So here we go. This is a show about crime. You know, we talk about bad people. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. Now, we take our stories very seriously, but we're going to take every opportunity we can to have a little bit of fun, have a little laugh based on what the goofy criminals out there are doing. But Bill is located up in Wisconsin, so we found a story for him to read about some goofball up there. And you folks know I'm in Florida, and there's never a shortage of goofballs here. Holy cow, I think we could combine the whole rest of the United States, the other 49 states, and still Florida would come out on top. So, Bill, I try to teach my children to be a leader or a follower. Well, Florida is the leader in goofy criminals, I'm telling you. I mean, some of these dumbasses are just amazing what they do.
You haven't heard of Wisconsin or read much about Wisconsin because we're pretty good too.
Yeah, well, before we so today we're recording this on January 7th, so this will come out in a couple weeks here. What did I tell you? I got it coming out on January 20th. So, yeah, so 2 weeks from today. And I woke up this morning, it was 41 degrees here in Orlando. I went to the gym about 6:30, and I about froze my you-know-what off. How cold is it where you are?
How cold did you say it was there?
41.
I wouldn't even wear a coat today. We're talking, I think it was 7 when we got up this morning and took our walk.
Oh, my God.
And 7 with a strong northwest wind is not a pleasant thing.
Oh, my goodness. Now, we have jumped up to 49. Oh, 50. We just broke 50. Going to 53. And down here, that's freaking cold.
Yeah. We're going to hit 20.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're gonna be at the all-time high.
So when are you and Gene going to move south?
We tried that and loved it. As you know, we spent some time in New Orleans, and between the food and the guys, it was a wonderful experience. But our family's up here, so
yeah,
we moved up there.
Understood. Understood. Those kids, I tell you what, they just still getting away all the time. Don't
Yeah,
they?
they do. Always underfoot.
Have you got grandkids yet?
Yeah. 3 of them.
Yeah. We've got 5, but it's just, I hope my kids aren't listening to this show, but I think I like my grandkids more than I like my kids.
My kids know that. It's not even close, because what you can do with the grandkids is when you get tired of them, you show them to the door and say bye-bye.
Yep. See you next time.
Yep. It was a pleasure, but we're done with you.
Yeah, we're thinking alike. All right, brother, let's get back over to Small Town Police Blotter. So if you got your story up there from Wisconsin, let us know what you got today.
Well, I'm ready to go. I'm not going to read it. I think it needs a little not embellishment, but in Wisconsin, as you might know, there's an awful lot of alcohol, a lot of brandy and a lot of beer, and a lot of people who enjoy drinking, either one or both. Both.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that going on, and occasionally you'll find a dumbbell. And when you put the dumbbell together with the alcohol, crazy things happen. So,
yes, they do.
So what happened here is New Year's Eve, nice policeman from a small northern Wisconsin city is sitting in a squad car, probably reading a book or something like that. And all of a sudden, one of these guys who mixed alcohol with a low IQ looked at the squad car and decided to charge it, jumped in the air, landed on the windshield, broke the windshield. Of course, the cop calls for help. Now, instead of the guy just giving up and saying, okay, I'm done, I did a stupid thing, when the good guys arrive, he's got to fight. So after the fight, he gets locked up, and he described it as a bad execution of a good dive, something to that effect.
What an idiot.
Yeah. What can you do?
Man. So what'd they lock him up for?
I think it was disorderly conduct.
I'm guessing resisting arrest.
Yeah, disorderly, criminal damage to property, battery to a law enforcement officer, quite a few things.
And we don't, like if it's like these guys that pulled the terrorist attack here recently, the one down in New Orleans, I don't mention names like that or show their pictures on the show because I don't want to give them any recognition whatsoever. But for these idiots, we're talking about Cody James Romano. I just happen to see his name up here.
Oh, okay.
We want to make sure he gets credit for being so goofy.
Yeah, it wasn't bright.
Yeah. So you guys can rival Florida when it comes to one of those crazy stories.
Sure can.
I mean, what the heck was he thinking? You just know that's going to turn out so bad.
Yeah, there's no good outcome I can think of. But again, if he has any IQ, it's kind of blurred by the brandy or the beer or whatever he was drinking on New Year's Eve. And he was drinking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever done that. I don't know what you're talking about there, but it's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Never did it before in my whole life, especially when we were agents. We never did that.
Well, when people read your book, they're going to find that a little different. All right. Well, thank you for doing that, Bill. And let's get over to our Florida story. And I don't understand what it is, but there are so many of these stories, these dumb criminals that come out of the Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater part over on the Gulf of Mexico. And that's where today's comes from. And so this is a McDonald's employee was kicked in the stomach by an irate and violent customer who was extremely unhappy with the service in the drive-thru. And this is according to the cops over there. Investigators allege that William Silva, who's 49 years old and certainly old enough to know better, exploded after being tied up at the drive-through lane, which was backed up on a Sunday at around 10:30 p.m. Well, that happens when everything else is closed. I mean, what'd you expect there, goofball? Anyway, cops said Silva entered the Clearwater McDonald's and started screaming and cursing at employees. And after being asked to calm down, Silva allegedly attacked a worker who was off duty at the time. A criminal complaint alleges Silva delivered a front kick to Cano, and that's the worker. But Cano didn't stand back and take it. He countered with several blows to Silva's head. Good for you. While Silva denied starting the altercation or creating a disturbance inside the restaurant, his account of the incident was contradicted by Cano and the McDonald's manager. Silva was arrested for disorderly conduct and battery, both misdemeanors. He was released from the county jail after posting $650 bond. His rap sheet includes convictions for cocaine possession and possession of drug paraphernalia. The only thing that surprised me about that is he didn't find meth on him. And Bill, you don't know that, but we have our number one rule here on the Game of Crimes is kids don't do meth.
Yeah.
So,
Good idea. It's like the
Yeah,
police
you
might
know-
have missed the dope on the search, though, too. I mean, that could happen.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, this, what do you think's going to happen? You got to pick your fights wisely if you're going to fight at all. And it sounds like he got his lumps there, which he earned those. He deserved them.
There we go with IQ again.
Or lack of.
Or lack of. Yeah. I can pretty much tell when I look at a guy, should I or shouldn't I? And 90% of the time now, it's no, don't even think about it.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Not this got anything to do with our age.
No.
We're not saying that by any means.
You were probably surprised to see how old I really am.
Well, no, I kind of based it on when you joined the agency and when you retired. And
Well, I could have joined it when I was 12 or 13, so that's a possibility.
yeah, no, it's
That's
not.
the only explanation for this.
I'll tell you what, brother, you look as young as I am.
Thank you, man.
I don't see that. I don't see that you look even that much older than
There
me.
you go.
I think both of us have been rode hard, put up wet way too
Yeah.
many times.
That's for sure.
So everybody, thanks again for joining us on Small Town Police Blotter. Believe it or not, we get positive comments on that all the time, and there's just no shortage of stupid criminals out there. So it's always fun to bring that on here. But I want to mention how I first met Bill here because we've never met in person. Bill, I was on Facebook one day and Bill had posted on there. I think we follow each other on Facebook.
Right.
And I saw where he had written a book. He decided to write a book. And I thought, well, crap, he's retired DEA. And I think in your post that you said you had read most other DEA agents' books that were out there. And there's a ton of them out there.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't know this guy. And believe it or not, there are people in law enforcement that have retired that will take credit for other people's work. I know that's hard to believe, but we both know it's true. And so because I didn't know Bill, but I knew where he worked, I made some phone calls to some friends. And that's the beauty of law enforcement, the law enforcement culture. We all have friends all around the world that we can call and find out just about anything about almost anybody. So I called a good friend, Scott Ando. You know Scott very
Sure
well.
do.
I love that guy. I'm going to have him on the show here soon. He's going to become a guest here soon.
Okay.
What I love about Scott is he pulls no punches. He will tell you what's on his mind, and he doesn't care if you're the king of the world. You're still going to hear about it. So anyway, all I did was check with Scott. He gave you glowing remarks, and in my book, if Scott gives you the thumbs up, brother, you're okay in my book. So
Thank you, Scott.
and he even sent me your phone number, and we got in touch. And before we go any much further here, I want to show you guys, because this just came out today on January 7th, and that's Bill's new book. And bear with me while I get my iPad up here and running. This is the front cover of his book, The Gambit. You can't even read it. You can't read upside down like that.
DEA Street Agents Undercover Odyssey.
There you go. It's available on Amazon. It's there now. Bill's son sent me the link here just before we started recording. I checked it out, and even I can find it. So if Murph can figure it out technologically, you should be able to, because I'm like a dinosaur because of this stuff. But like I do with all our guests that have a book, I ordered up. Well, I didn't order. I got Bill, I guess your editor or your publisher.
Yeah, she sent you a copy because, of course, I didn't have the ability to figure that out.
That's fine. She sent me a PDF copy of his book, and I got a chance to read it. I think it's 274 pages.
Yeah, something like that.
And if you want to know what a DEA agent does, this is the book you read. Okay. This guy started back. Your career started back. Well, before we get in that, where did you grow up, Bill? Let's find out a little bit about your background to start with.
Well, I grew up in it's called a subdivision of a very small city of a other very small city by the name of, I claim I'm from Wakanda, Illinois, but I really lived in Portland subdivision, which was a group of houses of about 30 or 40 houses set off the main street by several miles. And I basically grew up in Portland subdivision.
Did you say near Wakanda?
Yeah.
Isn't that the island, that secret island in the Black Panther? That movie, The Black Panther?
Yeah, but I don't think it is. I think it's an accident that they named it Wakanda, because the Wakanda I'm from is not like that.
That's not it. Okay. What did your mom and dad do?
My dad was a banker who got up every morning at 6:30 in the morning, drove to Barrington, jumped on the train, took it down to Chicago, worked at the First National Bank of Chicago. And my mom was a housewife who never drove, and she was a 50s housewife. Yeah.
How far were you guys from Chicago?
It was an hour train ride. So,
Wow.
yeah. That's when, before you had interstates and stuff like that. So we used to have to take a 2-lane down to, I can't remember what, before it turned into a 4-lane. But it was quite a ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
One sister, married to an Asian who I hope many.
Oh, we're going to talk about
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this.
Yeah. That was a bad deal.
Yeah. For her, maybe. I know who you're talking about. We'll save that till we get
good deal.
Get to his part here. So when you went to high school, did you play any sports in high school?
Yeah, played baseball, was a pitcher, and then I went to the U of I, the Circle campus, and my freshman year, I made the varsity and pitched and had a good win-loss average. And then that winter, I was working in a Clark station, the midnight to 8 shift, so I could pay for college. Which, believe it or not, you paid for college back then. You didn't just like get money from people or something like that. But anyhow, car gets stuck across the street, and I go to push him out with my right shoulder. Something popped, and as did my short-lived baseball career.
And U of I being the University of Illinois, were you righty or lefty?
Righty. Yeah, it's interesting.
And what was your top?
My what?
How fast was your fastball?
Very slow. The only thing I threw was a knuckleball. And
oh, really?
Yeah, that's when Hoyt Wilhelm was pitching, and I knew I couldn't. I had no fastball. I had the worst curveball in the history of the world. I'd throw it at third base, and it would come slowly over to the batter, and then he'd hit it real far. So I said, I got to develop something else. So I developed this knuckleball, and it was really effective. I just had a hard time finding catchers that could catch it, except one of my old buddies figured it out, and we went from there.
I tell you, man, when you see a knuckleball coming at you and the ball's not spinning, it's like, the heck is that?
I'm telling you, it was the craziest ball, and guys would have such a hard time because it would start at your shoulders by the time it got to you, and you'd say, okay, I'm going to tee off on this one, and the next thing you know, the thing is in the dirt. You never knew where it went, but it always went into the mitt.
You know, after when I was a city cop back in the 70s, of course, we had our FOP softball teams, and we'd play in tournaments, and I was a pitcher, and I did my best to try to perfect that knuckleball, because even softball, it wasn't fast pitch, it's slow pitch, but you would arc that ball, and if you got a good knuckleball, people lose their concentration. They can't believe the ball's not spinning.
If the wind's blowing out at you, that's when it really moves.
Yeah. And then it problem was I could only get it about 40% of the time.
Yeah.
Rest of the time, you don't know what the hell to do.
That could cause you problems. I got to tell you, a couple of years ago, I hadn't thrown a ball for probably 40 years, and I got the grandkids out, and they said, play catch with us, Grandpa. I said, no problem. So I picked up I think it was a 12-inch softball and threw it, and because it was like my arm wasn't there. It was like I threw it and it went 2 feet, and that's as far as I could throw it because of the injury I had from when I was a kid. It was like, it was embarrassing because they heard all these stories about whatever.
Understood, buddy.
Yeah.
Understood. So now you come out of college. What was your major?
Sociology and political science.
What did you want to do with that?
I didn't know. I was really drifting. I got to tell you, the guys I played college baseball with, I stayed friends with, and eventually they all graduated and went into the Postal Service as inspectors, ATF. My roommate was an ATF agent. He, in fact, turned out to be, I think, number 1 or 2 in ATF for a while. But 7 of the 9 guys turned out to be police.
Wow.
Of the 9 starters. And the ATF guy and myself get together one time, and he says, because he knew I was kind of floundering, I couldn't find myself, I was working jobs I hated, et cetera, et cetera. And Richard Nixon had declared the war on drugs, and they were hiring new BNDD agents.
Now, what is BNDD for our listeners?
Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. the predecessor agency to DEA. So anyhow, I put in an application, and boy, they jumped on it right away. But it took like 18 months to get hired. But I finally got hired, and I think I was 23 or 24 when I got a teletype. I was in a bar. I get a teletype from D.C. I don't know how the teletype person found me or anything, but he gives me this teletype and says, report to 15th and I or something in D.C. at the Sonesta Hotel at Monday morning. This was Friday night. So,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, literally, somebody must have dropped out or didn't qualify, and they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and there I'm sitting in a bar. They said, this is the guy.
Yep. He'll fit right in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tell you what, with my application, I got hired in 87. It took 2 years to finally get the phone call. And I was a railroad cop at that time and had just transferred back to Virginia Beach, or Norfolk, the Norfolk, Virginia area. Was still and I think I was still staying in a hotel at the time. I didn't even have an apartment yet. And my wife was back in West Virginia, finishing things up there. I think they called me on a Wednesday and said, can you be here Monday?
Yep.
No hesitation. I'll be here.
Yeah, like a rocket.
Yep. Happy to go.
Yep. It was so exciting.
It is. So from the time you graduated college until you got that teletype saying welcome aboard, what did you do during that 18-month period?
Do I really have to say?
Well, did you go to prison?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I stayed out of the joint. Okay.
That's good.
Didn't do a day of joint time. I sold Remington Rand typewriter or copy machines. I worked landscaping. I went back to the Clark gas station. I just couldn't find anything. And the sales thing, I knew I wasn't a salesman because I'd walk in and they'd see me and they'd say, you want to sell us a copier, right? I'd say, yeah. They say no. And I say, okay. I'd run to my car and my Opel did that and said, yeah, I'll see you. Wouldn't want to be, I'm out of here.
Oh, that's not bad. I mean, at least you're not laying around on mom and dad's couch doing nothing.
No, that wouldn't have happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Not my house either.
No, that wouldn't have happened.
So you go to, how long is, you show up in Washington, and this was 1972,
yep.
right? What time of year was it? Okay. So still cold there. And did you guys stay in hotels or barracks?
We stayed in.
What was your academy?
Stayed in the Sonesta Hotel, and the academy. It was like an old building with dust and stuff, and they had
like an old warehouse.
Like an old warehouse building. We did a lot of outside PT, but the classroom, if I remember right, was just a room that they made in this old building for 30 future agents. 20 of which would make it, 10 of which wouldn't.
Wow. What do you remember why 10 washed out? I mean, that's a third of the class.
It was vicious. There was it would be every day. Not too much of us realized what we were getting into, but every day when we reported to class, if there was an empty chair, it was, man, he didn't make it. So I don't know what the instructors, who all turned out to be good friends of mine, Gene Bachman.
I know Gene.
Yeah. Anyhow, I got along good with them. It's in about the 6th or 7th week, I'm playing a pickup game of basketball, came down and sprained my ankle real bad. And they took x-rays and said, you don't have a break, but you have a terrible sprain and we can recycle you. They liked me enough barely at that time where they said, we'll recycle you. And I said, I don't want to go through this shit again. Yeah.
Understood.
I said, how can you not recycle me? And they said, well, we started at 6 a.m. or something. Show up at 5 o'clock. We'll tape you up and you can do the mile run taped up. And if you can make that, you'll graduate because you can do all the other stuff. So that's what we did. And I got taped up every morning and I was always last on the mile run, but I made it and finally graduated and said goodbye.
Now, so back during that time, that was in 72. I went through the academy in 87. Did you guys have, did they do like mock scenarios where they teach you how to go out and do surveillance? You surveil each other around town?
For sure. Yeah. We did a lot of that, a lot of practicals. I can just imagine they weren't nearly as practical as was developed in later years. But, you did UC stuff, you did practical surveillances, you did vehicle stops, and they were all in the streets in D.C., but it was at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning where there wasn't any traffic. And then they'd say, night, we'll see you at 5. And that went on 7 days a week. We had one weekend off, I think, that Memorial Day.
No kidding.
Yeah. It was,
Wow.
It was, I can't say, I just knew I wouldn't fail. I couldn't fail. I just couldn't live with myself if I would have failed. So the guys that made it through were really driven because they worked you hard. And if you know Gino, he wasn't playing patty case with us.
Oh, no. No, he's, in fact, I think last I heard about Gino, he's living in Tennessee.
He may be. Yeah.
It's been a long time since, gosh, I haven't even heard his name in years and years.
Yeah.
But that just gets back to our age. Let's don't go there. Now, how long was your academy?
8 weeks.
And did you have any say-so where you going to get stationed after that?
If I recall right, the number one guy in the class got the choice, but the rest of it was just, if you want the job, you're going to go where we send you.
The needs of the agency.
Yeah.
Did you even get to put in a wish list?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to put in a wish list, but well, you know what? I got my number 5 pick, Miami.
There you go. That's not too shabby.
Oh, I loved it. I was putting in for place. This were my picks. Number 1 was Norfolk, Virginia. Number 2 was Wilmington, North Carolina. Number 3 was Charleston, South Carolina. Number 4 was Jacksonville, Florida. And then they said, you got to pick a division. So I said, well, just put me in Miami division. And they did.
Had quite a wish list. You had quite a wish list there because you may have never left Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, coming out of Columbia, I actually got selected to go to Charleston, which, this is post Pablo Escobar and all that crap. And I loved it. My wife and I, they brought my old partner, Javier Pena, now they brought us to headquarters for an attaboy trip because of the Escobar case and all that. And when you come back from overseas, you don't get a house hunting trip. So what just so happened, Charleston had an open investigation on the Ochoa brothers. And so I said, well, how about if I come by and review your files and, see what you got and then see if there's anything I can help you with in Columbia. So yes, it was a boondoggle trip. So it was. So my wife, we go down there go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in the end, I have to say that DEA ultimately treats you right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. I don't believe in coincidence and luck. So we go down there and spend a day at the office. The next day we get with the realtor and we're looking for temp quarters, and we go ahead and put a deposit down on a beachfront house. Nice. And got back to our hotel room. We had our first daughter was with us. My 2 sons were still here in the States, and we had adopted 2 little girls in Colombia. My first daughter was with us, and I had a message to call my boss in Bogota. So I called him, and he's like, hey, I got bad news. They just rescinded your transfer to Charleston. Like, what are you talking about? I'm in Charleston right now. I just rented a house, did all my whining and complaining and bitching. Yeah. And he said, I don't know what to tell you. We just got a cable saying you're not going. I'm like, okay. So I got on the phone. Now, we had just been in headquarters meeting with the chief of operations, who was Doug Wonkel.
Yep.
And I think chief of international ops was, I could see his face.
Not bad.
No, it was after him. Bobby Davis. And so Doug and Bobby took us around. They took us over to the Department of Justice to introduce us to the Attorney General. And I mean, they just really wined us and dined us. So that night, I'm like, screw this. I got on the phone. I called 202-307-1000. Got the duty agent. I said, get me Doug Wonkel on the phone now. And he's like, yes, sir. And Doug got on the phone, and I don't think I've ever told this story on the podcast. I let him have it. I'm like, so I was calling him names. I said, I was up there 3 days ago, and you told me I was the best thing since sliced bread. As soon as I walked out the door, you shoved it right up my rear end. And I'm just giving him down the road. And he's like, who in the hell is this? And who do you think you're talking to? Oh, sorry, boss.
Forgot my place.
Yeah, I did. But he was decent about it. He raked me over the coals because you know how it is. You don't act like that in our agency.
No.
And long story short, I ended up Greensboro, North Carolina. But I was supposed to go to Charleston. I was dying to go there.
Yeah, Greensboro's not too bad either.
It was not. It was not. So made some lifelong friends, just like you did up in Milwaukee and Chicago, and that's the way things go. But so now your first post is where?
Chicago.
Chicago, Illinois. Nothing going on in Chicago.
Group 3, there was stuff going on, but back then, the agents, like when a new guy came into the group, especially as green as I was as green as you can get, nobody trusted you. And I was, for the first 4, 5, 6 months, my job was to fill up the senior agent's car with gas, bring in coffee in the morning, drive them to the men's clothing store and stuff like that. And I was very disappointed, but I wouldn't let that dampen my enthusiasm. So I just kept on saying, boss, let me go undercover, boss, let me go on the surveillance, this and that. And finally, the boss, Aldo Aurelio, who was just a great guy.
I've heard that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He ended up in Florida. He retired down, I think, in Palm Beach or someplace. But Aldo, he said, okay, you want to make some buys? We'll get you some buys. But he said, if you screw them up, it's on you. You don't want to be taking too many risks this young in your career. I just want to get on the street. Let me do a surveillance by myself or something like that. So anyhow, they started letting me make some buys and did a lot of buys. They sent me on what back then was called a special assignment. In the early 70s, the universities were having a terrible time with drugs. All kinds of drugs. It was not even close to what it is today as far as the problem, but it was LSD, PCP, heroin, whatever. The assistant regional director up there put together a team of 6 or 7 agents, really the newest agents in the office, and said, here's your supervisor. One of them was Gus Vasquez. I don't know, you may have heard of Gus.
Don't know him.
Anyhow, he sent us down to these universities and gave us a pocket full of money, which at that time wasn't that much. It was like 20 grand, and said, okay, you got 3 weeks or 4 weeks to make as many buys as you can and do as much as you can. Well, I did that on all 4 of the universities. And it was like, all you had to do was walk into a bar and say, I want dope. And they'd say, how much and where do you want it,
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I had one deal in Bloomington, Indiana, where we were so busy. I made probably 60 buys. And we were trying to not deal with the students. We're trying to get to their source of supply, of course. So anyhow, I set up 2 deals at exactly the same time, but on different sides of town. So I called up trick number 1 and I said, listen, I'm going to be in this part of the university at such and such a time, which is exactly the same time I was going to meet trick number 2. But I met him on different sides of the University of Illinois or University of Indiana side. So I ran over, made a buy off of clown number 1 and said thank you. And when I saw him disappear, I walked around the sign and made a buy off of clown number 2. And that was it.
Oh,
yeah, it was crazy. It was
so during that time, did you have surveillance covering you out there?
Most of the time we had one guy. Yeah, because everybody was just as busy as I was, and everybody they sent down there, with few exceptions, were UC guys that bought. So you'd make 1, 2, 3 buys a day. Then of course you'd have to go and do the reports, if you remember right, with the typewriters and the DEA 6s. Yeah. And by that time it was, we call it campfire time, where we all sat in the middle of the living room and talked about who you bought off of and if we got any source of supply that we should invest some more time and money in. But it was a great time. It was a great learning experience because I bought every type of drug. I mean, we all bought every type of drug there was to buy. So we all learned the little nuances that goes along with buying LSD or buying PCP or hashish, or getting into a room full of a bunch of junkies and everybody sitting in a circle, tied off, shooting up, not drooling coming out of their faces. And you'd say, is there anybody dealing in here? And, some moped raise his hand and you make a buy off of him, and you'd identify him later or try to get his name or number. Well, that's what we did. We did that. Each one lasted, say, 2 to 4 months. And by the time I got done with that, I had plenty of little nickel-dime UC experience. But we got some, when we busted it out, we got some decent stuff.
Were you not worried about your safety? Was violence not a consideration back then?
For the most case, I don't think so. I can remember a couple times where we were way out in the country dealing with the sources of supply, and surveillance just couldn't cover you, so you just had to do it by yourself. You probably don't remember Steve.
I do remember Steve.
Okay. Well, he was my basic training roommate, and him and I worked together. But I can remember one time where we were out in the middle of nowhere buying off these guys, and felt uncomfortable because if they wanted to do us, they could have done us. So
yeah,
but it wasn't like it turned out to be after things got going as far as cocaine and marijuana and stuff like that.
When you went through the academies, was every agent hired by BNDD? Were they expected to be able to work undercover?
Yep.
Yes. So when I came on, I wanted to work undercover. And I looked like a cop when I was young. I mean, I could have been the poster child for just about any police department. It just should have had cop, pig, or something tattooed on my forehead there. And I'm in Miami in the late 80s, and I'm doing undercover, and I'm thinking, holy cow, if I can do it, anybody could. But nowadays, it's just really different.
Here,
that's very.
I hear
it's
if you don't want to do it, you say, I don't want to do it.
What you'd like to tell them is go get another job.
Yeah. The guys that I worked in Group 3 in Chicago, and that was only for 2 years. But everybody in the group bought. They went undercover. And we went into some really bad neighborhoods. I remember I bought a house, it was Hehr, in an alley at 23rd and Maplewood in Chicago. And I knew I was going to die when I went in that alley because surveillance couldn't cover you. But by then I had developed a rap and talked my way out of it and bought the ounce and came back in the office and was very happy.
So given all the circumstances, did you feel comfortable working undercover because you're a good bullshitter, or you just like the excitement and the adrenaline rush, or both?
I think the good bullshitter took a long time to develop. It took a lot of undercover work to get to the point where I wouldn't be afraid to stick my finger in a crook's chest and say, if you think I'm the effing man, you're stupid. You don't trust the informed. It took a long time for me to develop that bravado. But after I developed it, then it was, except for the last deal I did in Miami, everything was good.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So you said you only did 2 years in Chicago. What happened? Where'd you go?
What happened was one of the girls that myself or Steve bought off of, I actually think Steve bought off of her. Steve had a family tragedy, and when she flipped, he couldn't work with her. So because I was his partner at the time, I worked with her. And she told me about a guy and this is going to be a slow story moving to Milwaukee, but it'll get there quick enough. Anyhow, she told me about a guy, we made a buy off of her. It was probably 5 grams of something. She flipped and she said, hey, I got a guy up in Northern Illinois that does million hits of White Crosses, which people don't know about anymore. I don't think. I haven't heard of White Crosses since this particular case.
Since I was a city cop in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, he could do 1 million hits of White Crosses, which at that time was an unheard of amount. And White Crosses were used at that time by truck drivers, students, housewives. It was just speed is all it was. Yeah. So I talked to her. My boss at the time listened to the debriefing, and he said, Jesus, this sounds like this is possibly a real thing. We couldn't imagine 1 million hits. So anyhow, she puts me on the phone with him. I talk to him. He gives me the cross-examination. I said, well, I initially wanted to buy 250,000 hits. They came in bundles of 25,000. And he said, yeah. But he said, I don't want to do 250,000. Will you take 350,000? I said, hell yeah, I'll take 350,000.
With a smile, arm.
Yeah. So we set that deal up, and I meet him in a bar in some suburb of Chicago. And he walks in, and surveillance now you're talking surveillance, because now the kid's got I had 170,000 or whatever in the trunk of my car, which I would only flash if I had to. But I meet the guy in the bar, and both of us got tight jaws. He's a little worried about me. I'm a little worried about me. And I knew the guy, there was surveillance in the bar. But anyhow, I talked to him. We make arrangements to meet in his car where the dope was supposed to be. I said if I looked at the dope and I liked it, I'd go to my car, which was also in the parking lot, get the money, and show it to him. So he goes out to get into his car. I'm a little bit behind him. I'm walking through the threshold of this frickin' restaurant. I had my little 6-shot 38 Smith & Wesson tucked in my back. Son of a bitch falls down into my legs. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, this is not good. I'm thinking the surveillance guys are going to see that, and this will be the last time I ever work on it. But anyhow, I closed the door real quick, and I slowly, I scooched the gun up to my hip. Then I went in the car. He had a great big Afghan dog in the car. He said the dope's in the suitcase, and opened the suitcase up, and there was a whole bunch of black bags, pillows, each containing 25,000 hits. And I said, that looks good, and walked out of the car, gave the bus signal, and he got scooped up.
Wow. And how much was it? It was 300,000, 350?
350. Yeah.
Holy cow.
So what happens after that, this is how I get up to Milwaukee. He flips, cuts me into a guy who's in San Diego at the time. I get on the phone with the guy in San Diego. He cuts me in over the phone. We debriefed him really well. He knew the right things to say, so he called up the guy in San Diego, and the San Diego guy said, I'll do 750,000. I said, no, I wouldn't. I need $1 million. It's $1 million or nothing. So he said, okay. So he said, meet me at O'Hehr. I'm going to be wearing, this is what I look like. He said, the other guy who cut me in on the phone gave me a physical description of the guy. This guy, Steve, says, this is what I'm going to be wearing. I'm going to be arriving in gate so-and-so, and I'll give you the baggage tickets to the baggage. There's 2 big, heavy bags. And then I'll hook up with you after you pick up the bags, and we'll go out to your car and get the money. Now, both cases, I didn't have to show any money because the informants were so good and so strong. So anyhow, again, Group 3 is all over me. I mean, I can't shake them. They're still thinking the rookie's gonna, if he drops this one, because I'm supposed to have 600 some thousand in my car. But anyhow, Steve gets off the plane. He walks by me just as planned. We don't even make eye contact. He hands me 2 baggage claim tickets. He keeps on walking to where we're supposed to meet after I pick up the dope. And I go, and here's these 2 great big suitcases that come off the belt, take it in the washroom, pop them open real quick, and sure as shit, there's all kinds of black bags in there. So my supervisor came in, and he said, everything good? I said, yeah, it's bus time. So we popped him. And after that arrest and the information we gathered, there was a lot of stuff going on in Wisconsin. And between that and driving my senior partner all over down to Crown Point, Indiana, and back to Wakanda every night, I took the transfer to Milwaukee so I could develop the case.
Yeah, I tell you what, I read that part in your book. When I first got to Miami, we were short on G cars too, government cars. And a senior guy that was originally customs, and we'll talk about that here on our part 2, but he had a car. So luckily where he lived was halfway between where I lived in Fort Lauderdale and the Miami office. So I would have to take him home every night, drop him off, and I'd go home, and then he'd tell me what time to pick him up in the morning. And, the only bad thing about it, well, he was a decent guy. He wasn't a case maker, but he was more of a tech kind of guy. But the only bad part was that he smoked, and he smoked in the car, and it just stunk.
Yeah.
But, that's part of paying your dues, though, when you get on the job.
Well, yeah, I can't remember what it was, but from the Chicago office, which we never left until 7 o'clock, so rush hour was over, I drive to Crown Point, which was about, I think, an hour and a half. And then I drive from there to Wakana, which was about 2.5 hours. Go to bed, go back, pick Joe up. And I mean, this repeated itself for about 30 days until I heard of the opening in Milwaukee. And one of my old buddies from Chicago had transferred up there, and he says, "Come on up. It's a 20-minute commute." And that's about all he had to say. I didn't care. What about anything else? A 20-minute commute. I could do that standing on my head.
It doesn't matter where you go. There's drug dealers everywhere.
Yeah. No doubt.
Hey, Bill, I'm going to go ahead and finish up our first episode now. And when we come back, we're going to get into what's going on in Milwaukee and then eventually down New Orleans. I got a lot of cases I want to ask you about. But for our listeners, thank you again for joining us here on part 1 of episode 180 with Bill Hehr, a retired BNDD and DEA agent. Bill, I think you're probably the first BNDD guy I've ever had on the show. And I'm into my 4th year on this show. I'm not calling you an old guy. It's nice to hear the legacy of how things came along. And so come back for part 2, everybody. We're going to talk about how BNDD became DEA, and then we'll get into some more war stories. So until tomorrow, we'll see you then. Hey, players, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. In the meantime, just a reminder that Game of Crimes is now posting interview videos on YouTube. You can find those at Game of Crimes Podcast. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com, where you'll find all our episodes, our guests, book lists, merchandise, and more. And for more content, join us on patreon.com/gameofcrimes. I have several monthly episodes that range from silly to serious, so come on over and join the fun. In the meantime, everyone stay safe. I'll see you tomorrow for part 2.